Hello everyone, we're glad to see you at our SAP Tech Talks webinar. Before we begin, a couple of words about the event organization itself. The webinar will be recorded and then posted on our YouTube channel. So you can ask all your questions in the Q&A field. Our speaker today is Aleksandr Ivanov, and the topic he's going to share is embracing integration solution advisory methodology. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ilona. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Let me switch to the presentation. So, yeah, embracing integration solution advisory methodology, or ISAM for short. Yeah, creating the integration strategy for the complex integration landscape. So it sounds kind of complex, right? And to be honest, what I want to do today is to unpack this in a simple words, to unpack this and explain to you, like in the simple terms, how exactly we're preparing the integration strategy. What is integration strategy? What is ISAM? And how basically to bring the order to this house of connected systems, corporate systems, I mean. And ISAM is a methodology which can help with this. Before we start, a couple of words about me. My name is Aleksandr Ivanov. I'm a solution architect in EPAM Systems. Also, I'm a head of integration discipline, SAP integration discipline in EPAM. And I started working with SAP solutions in 2012, so kind of long ago. And during this period, I worked with different on-premise and cloud SAP solutions like ECC, CRM, then S/4HANA, of course, then cloud systems like SAP Customer Experience, or CX for short. There is a number of systems there. And in parallel with this, I also started to work with integration platforms, again from SAP, not only. So started with SAP process integration and process orchestration, then of course integration suite, which was cloud integration, cloud platform integration at that time. So all of this, basically during this period, during this like 12 years, I looked like how systems are speaking to each other, how they're communicating, and that's why, yeah, I want to share with you some of my experience here. And after this talk, I hope, first of all, you'll have a good idea what ISAM is about, right? And we'll explain like what are the concepts, what are the maturity steps, and what is the process around the methodology. Then also, I will explain how to create the integration strategy. Yeah. Then at the closer to the end, we'll explore some caveats and some trade-offs or some key learnings. How exactly we should implement, what are the problems around the ISAM implementations and how we can overcome this. And the target audience for today is basically, of course, main audience is the solution and enterprise architects who want to explore what are the options to simplify the integration landscape, and basically anyone also who are interested in these types of content, on these types of methodologies. So let's start. The agenda for today, basically a little bit already covered, but in general. So first of all, the chapter number 1, intelligent enterprises, and I want to remind you and remind ourselves that what are the problems in the current enterprise integrated landscapes, and what is the complexities here. Then we'll explore what is ISAM in a nutshell in the chapter number 2. Then in the third chapter, I will go through the main methodology concepts. Basically, we will need to build this foundation, right? To then discuss the tooling, first of all, the tools which I was using in my projects, and also to check what are the insights, what are the key learnings which I got through this period. So this is the plan for today. Of course, in the later part, we'll have some time for your questions and I'll try to answer them. Let's roll. First of all, the intelligent enterprises. And as I said, let's remind ourselves what is the problems, what are the complexities, right? So the modern enterprise landscapes, as you can see on the screen, they're kind of complex. Yeah, they're difficult to understand because there are many systems in on-premise, there are many systems in the cloud, you can see. And why we have this, right? So basically we have this because we have multiple business processes, and it turns out that business processes and the systems which support these business processes are actually spanning across the system. So there is no like one super mega big system which can help you to solve all the problems, to run all the processes. So that's why basically we need integration. So from this fact, the stems the need for integration. Also, of course, we want to capture the master data once, right? And then we want to use it in all of our processes. And we don't want to have 3 different systems capturing customers or 5 different systems capturing products or prices and all. So we want some one point of truth so that we can distribute the data. And that's also the reason, one of the reasons why we need the integration, right? And also it turns out that the middleware components, there is also a big diversity here. So as you can see, there is a middleware components or systems or platforms, whatever, in the on-premise environment. You can see the PO, which is kind of the previous version of integration suite. We have also, of course, the integration suite from SAP in the cloud. And we have many different things. For example, some legacy platforms, legacy scripts, so some point-to-point integrations in the on-premise, of course. And also we have the cloud tools, not from only SAP, of course. For example, we can see the Tipka middleware. We can, of course, have the MuleSoft. So anything what we can see here. And also we have tools for data integration like DataSphere, Informatica, also here, and streaming platforms like Kafka, like Qs. So many different things, right? And also it's the change of this is also quite high. So the pace of change in the corporate landscapes is quite high, right? And that's one maybe the main reason why the Excel is not enough right now. And I mean, Excel is not enough for managing or for collecting all of these integration points, collecting all of these integrations, and just having this this list, you know, like source system, target system, maybe data object. So as we had before, yeah, it's already not enough. To be honest, it was not enough already for the long time. Yeah, and SAP is one of the solutions, and let's explore what is it. So the problem statement, I hope we understood, right? We remind ourselves, and then we'll dive to the high level definition of the methodology of the integration solution advisory methodology. But before, just a quick disclaimer. So first of all, this is not a new thing. I think it was 10 years already, from the time when SAP created this methodology. And actually, SAP understood that integration is kind of very important part of the enterprise landscapes, right? And that's why they created the methodology, that's why they created the white papers, and so on and so forth. But on the other side, I see it like every time, like many customers, not all, but many customers have the integrations. They have just an Excel sheet where the source system, target system, maybe the integration platform, and that's basically all, right? So of course there are a couple of another fields, but basically this is everything which they can tell about the landscape with a focus on integration, right? And this is why I think it's also important already to promote this methodology so that everyone is aware, everyone can use it. That's why I was speaking about this today. So let's dive in. So the methodology itself, it helps you to define the integration strategy. But what is integration strategy? Yeah, and by definition from SAP ISM, it's kind of a sum of the concepts. It's some of the technology agnostic concepts like domains, styles, patterns, and also the mapping of these technology agnostic concepts to the context of the enterprise. And I will explain all of this later, so don't worry here. In addition to this, there are also addition of the blueprints of the guidelines, guardrails This is kind of all tied together. And apart from this, we have the process which ties everything, which is an interface assessment process. So this is a process which comes from the requirements or from requests from business, like please integrate the system A with system B. And you create the design, the architecture based on the requirements, going through all the things which you define for the methodology. This is in a nutshell. And also there is the 4 steps. Actually, there are 5 steps or 5 steps of maturity which you can get, right, implementing the methodology. The steps number 0, it's kind of you do not systematize anything. So you do not use any methodology. You probably use just Excel sheet, and you know that you have I don't know, 20, 50 systems, and somehow they're integrated through several platforms. So this is kind of a zero level. And there is a level 1. This is the first level. It's kind of basically these levels are just steps to implement the framework, to implement the methodology. And the first one is the strategy assessment. And just to highlight, so in the official documentation from SAP, there is a little bit different definition of these steps. So the steps are the same, but the content is a little bit different, because here I put the steps which I have seen on the different projects which are normally performed on the steps, right? They are mostly similar, but there are some differences, so that you know. And in strategy assessment, normally what I have seen that we are establishing this integration center of excellence. And mainly this is the group of architects. So in the first iteration, in the first step, this is just a group of architects, maybe solution enterprise architects, who actually run the methodology, who create the guidelines and everything, and who implement the steps further, right? Also, we need to understand the baseline platform. So what are we having? What are the platforms? I mean, integration platforms. What are the tools we're having? Starting to define the decision registry for our further decisions. And of course, starting to create this interface registry, because we need to understand what is the situation right now. Then there is the step number 2, which is this design HIP, and HIP stands for Hybrid Integration Platform. And Hybrid Integration Platform is just a sum of all the tools, all the platforms, everything which you have in your landscape. And here you can see also the number of steps. Like we need to enable enterprise architecture tooling. So because I will show you closer to the end, but the running of the framework should be supported by some tools, right? Also, we need to start creating the technology agnostic concepts like domains, styles, patterns, and we need to create the technology mapping. We will explore this in a minute. The third part, this is best practices, guidelines. So basically, we are enriching our already created strategy, the baseline strategy, with all of the platforms, with technology mapping, with domain styles. We are enriching additionally with the content. What are the guidelines? For example, you may think the guidelines per platform. So how are you using Kafka? How are you using SAP Cloud Integration? What are the limitations? For example, if you have multiple platforms, for example, you can have MuleSoft, you can have Boomi, and also you can have integration suite. So you should understand when to use what. And this is in the step number 3, you're defining these guidelines. And guardrail, basically what you should not do, right? And additional things like technical debt log, registry of the blueprints. And this is very important. We will speak about this. Blueprints is one of the most important things in the integration framework. And also establishing the interface assessment process. And here, actually in the step number 3, where the actual work can start. Yeah, the actual following the process and following the interface assessment process, getting the requirements from business, and then creating the architecture or creating the design. So this is step number 3. And step number 4 is evolution and empowerment. This is already ongoing process. So you might imagine when you implemented something, you need to always monitor what is going on. You need to evolve and you need to make it better, basically. But also there is additional governance processes which are established in this step, and also additional, for example, the security approval process, right? Because whenever you create, whatever you create, the designs, they should follow the highest level security governance from your company. So this is where it also can be implemented. And basically, that's all about the overall understanding of the methodology. So we discussed this maturity step, right? We discussed why we need it. And now I want to introduce you the concepts and the examples which I have from real project, how these concepts kind of documented, how they're created in the real project, right? And this will be the big section. And why we need it? Basically, because we need to build this foundation, this understanding, what the methodology consists of, so that we can then discuss what are the benefits and what are the key learnings we have. So that's why it will be kind of a big one. So the main concepts, and this slide will be kind of a map for our further discussion. So you can see the integration domains, the integration styles and patterns. Yeah, this is kind of technology agnostic part. And in these three concepts, we are not speaking about any of the platforms. It's kind of all high level technology agnostic things. Then starting with technology mapping, architecture blueprint, and interface assessment. Here we are closer to the ground, we are closer to the context of the enterprise, and we mapping basically these high level things to the context of the enterprise. And we can really implement the interface assessment based on these 5 steps. And as I already said, the interface assessment, this is just a process where we are getting the requirements and creating the design in terms of high-level design. For example, we can show the blueprint and also the low-level design, which is basically the technical specification. So you might imagine some diagrams, some details about where the source code is and something like this, what are the platforms and all of this. Well, this is the map. And let's start with the integration domains. Yeah. And here on the diagram, let me even use a laser pointer. So you can see there are the places which are defined here. For example, the cloud, on-premise, and also additional things like real-world objects, and also user-centric applications. So those are the places where applications reside, right? And also you can see the routes between these places. So for example, user to on-premise, you can see cloud to on-premise, cloud to cloud, sync to cloud. So these are the routes between these places. And basically the domains as defined by the integration solution advisory methodology, these are those places. So for example, cloud to cloud, right? What does it mean? It means that we need to integrate system number A, which resides in the cloud, to system B, which also resides in the cloud. So very simple. The same cloud for the cloud to on-premise. Sorry. So we need to understand, we need to integrate the system in the cloud to system to on-premise. And also it's like works both ways. So it's either from cloud to on-premise or it's from on-premise to cloud, right? So this is very simple technology agnostic concepts. And this is the highest level definition of the interface. So this is the highest level how you can describe the interface. So then what is going on here? It is the integration styles and integration use case patterns. First of all, I will close the integration patterns and let's discuss the integration styles. So also I will show you, so you can see here, this is kind of horizontal line going on, and there is a number of styles. So one of them is process integration, also there is data integration, analytics, user think. Yeah, this is the definition from ISAM. You can basically create your own styles, but based on my experience, it's not needed because ISAM defines like most of you can get. Yeah, for example, process integration and data integration. This is, I think, like 80% at least of what you will get on the projects. And what is style? So basically, it's archetype. So it's kind of first of all, the second level of definition, how you can describe the interface, right? And this is archetype, which describes, like in general, what is this? Why the way integrating the data? So you might imagine that probably there is a maybe table-to-table data replication, so some ETL involved, some data virtualization may be involved. But if we are speaking about the process integration, so of course it's more about maybe synchronous calls from one system to another, just check something, get something, or maybe some replication of single objects, for example, replication of business partner, or some event coming from one system just to, and we need to react to this. But of course, event-based, it's a little bit different, but we will come to this later. So in general, second level integration styles, and we have 5 of them. You can use all of them, you can use just a subset, and you can create your own. So this is how it works. So then integration patterns or integration use case patterns, how it is defined. This is the next level, the third level, right? And as you can see, the patterns are defined inside the style. So this is already a little bit more refined approach, yeah, how you define the integration. This is already closer to the real world examples. So for example, in the process integration, you can see the A2A, which stands for application to application. You can have the B2B, which is business to business. And you can have master data and all. And inside these styles, or inside these patterns, you already can like think of the real integrations. How do they look like? Also business to government, right? And as you can see, there is also a separate part here, which is called cross-use cases. And cross-use cases is also interesting thing because cross-use cases means it's kind of separates pure or simple integrations, which you can have above, like in the process and data integration, for example, from the complex patterns. And as you can see here, so API managed, event-based, yeah, these ones, and especially digital integration hub. This is all the complex patterns, and these patterns actually combines like many of those which we consider like simple ones. So, for example, in the API managed integration, you can have, of course, API management platform, which somehow controls the flow, control the communication with third parties. But basically, it may be just B2B integration, right? But we have, and additionally, we have the API platform for managing, maybe for self-service registration and getting the API keys or something. So that means that in addition to this API, it's also a B2B integration. So that's why it's kind of complex one. Or event-based integration, again, we can integrate processes, of course, because if you might imagine from SAP, there's goes some event, for example, customer created, and we want to react to this somehow, but still it's process integration realized with the event-based integration. That's why this is kind of a complexity here. And again, you should create your own, or you can create your own patterns. You can use the same which are defined by the methodology. And as I have seen, again, it's really enough what is defined here, and even in some cases too much. So we are not using, for example, in the current project, we aren't using everything. We are using just a subset of the cross-use cases, subset of the process data integration, and that's all. Now I want to show you how this looks like from the real example from the real project. Like how the domain defined, yeah, in the documentation, how the styles and patterns, just so you have the understanding like how it looks like. And actually very simple because you can see the domain, you can see just the definition of which domains are in use, cloud to cloud, like hybrid to cloud, cloud to hybrid. So this is kind of the, you're just listing this and no more. Again, the integration style, also part of the documentation, just define what are in use in the, and that's all you can define in the Confluence. And integration use case patterns, again, so you just define in the Confluence or somewhere on your wiki page what you're using. And also the important part here, I hope you can see here, is kind of selection questionnaire. Yeah. And this selection questionnaire, this is a part which is being used by the solution architects. So when someone, he or she, goes to like understand what is a requirement and how to implement it, so he or she should just check this questionnaire, to understand what specific use case pattern it might be. Yeah, because depending on the inputs, for example, data volumetry, some security requirements, some other requirements, whether it's in hybrid on the cloud or on premise. So the solution like builds from answering kind of these questions. And of course, you cannot like script all the questions, but it's kind of just to guide you where you should look, right? And again, you can see that there is no, for example, this data orchestration here is kind of not highlighted, it's not in use, but the data virtualization and data replication is in use. So again, as I said, you can just use just whatever you need, and you can avoid whatever you don't need. This is the good part of the methodology. And also, just to highlight that, as you have seen, we were not speaking here about any of the technologies, any of the platforms, right? So I was not speaking about integration suite, I don't know, Boomi, anything, and Microsoft, just because it's actually technology agnostic in a sense that you are defining all of this kind of theoretically here, and then you can map it to anything you want. Yeah. So of course it has SAP in the name, SAP ISM, but it's actually not bound to SAP. You can use it whenever you want, even without the SAP products. This is one important thing to mention. So the next thing is the technology mapping, right? And if you remember, there were three things, like three agnostic parts and three technology related parts, or the parts which are mapped to some context of the organization. And here I want to show you what is this. So the integration styles, right? We discussed the integration styles. This is after the domains, this is the second level. Then we want to define the use case patterns as a part of specific styles. So you can see there is a patterns attached to the different styles. And then you can see here this nice diagram which shows you how the specific platforms, specific tools or capabilities, whatever it might be, mapped to a specific use case patterns. And as you can see here, we're not speaking only about enterprise service buses, we're speaking about everything. Yeah. So integration platform as a services, analytics, data management, IoT, whatever, streaming platforms, queues, and all. So whatever is used in your organization to make systems to speak to each other, you can put to these buckets and then define for yourself, okay, I have use case pattern, data replication, which tools I use. So maybe data intelligence, maybe it's Informatica, maybe it's something else. So you're defining for yourself, or you're just seeing what is in use right now. Then you think like, okay, for data virtualization, what I can use, for process integration, and all of this, you just draw the lines, literally, just understand what are the platforms and why we're using them. And it might happen when you don't see any tool or any platform covering some of the use case pattern. Yeah, that means that probably you don't have this use case pattern yet, or maybe you want to implement this, but you need to think about the new tools. So this can happen as well. And basically, in larger corporations, it can be that you have multiple integration strategies, because in real big companies, you can have like strategy for one country where many of the systems are kind of only for this specific country, and you will work, and you cannot like describe with ISM everything. So this can also be the case when you have like multiple strategies and they are kind of combined on the higher level of the governance of the whole organization. This is also some of the examples which I have seen before. And just to show you an example of the technology mapping, you can see here on the screen, as we discussed. So we are mapping the specific use case pattern to some platforms. And I'll show you here, for example, the A2A, application to application, which is a part of process integration. And you are mapping it to several platforms. And what is important here is a decision tree, right? Because yes, you have SAP Cloud Integration, you have Dell Boomi, you have SAP Cloud Integration Gateway, and other stuff. And you need to think, how do I decide which tool to use in which case? And with this, of course, decision tree can help. And this is a part of implementation of the methodology. It's kind of a part of guideline definition where you're writing what exactly and where am I using. Yeah. And this will be the input for the solution architects who are actually getting the requirements, working through them, looking here, and deciding, okay, this probably is a good fit for the SAP Cloud integration because this is a process integration, and also we have the standard package, right? So this is kind of a thought process. And the same for data replication, as you can see, the same for event-based. So for example, for event-based, it might be the Kafka for everything, just as a message broker, but also you want to use either SAP Cloud integration or Dell Boomi, depending on the situation, depending on the scenario. So this is again the context of the organization and what do we have like in our current situations, like what is the skill set? It's one of the inputs maybe, what are the platforms, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of all should be documented here. And the last, but I think the most important part of the specifically the concepts of the methodology is the blueprint. And again, just reminding you that we are speaking about the domain. Here you can see the cloud to on-premise, right? It means that from cloud to on-premise, we are sending some data. The style is process integration. The use case pattern is A2A. And here we're coming to the blueprint. So the blueprint is just a specific way. If you remember, we had this technology mapping, but the blueprint is a specific way how we are using this technology. And so basically, this is a diagram, as you can see on the screen, the diagram with some sort of info sheet, so some sort of documentation, which defines how exactly we are working with these integrations and how we're implementing these integrations. And here you can see that the sender system and the receiver system are kind of generic. So it's not a specific diagram for a specific integration, but it's just a way how we are working with, in this example, how we're working with cloud integration. So the cloud application sends some information, probably via HTTP, right? Cloud integration receives this, maybe it's a JSON file, a JSON structure, or something like this. We're using API Business Hub also, and for the sending message to the on-premise system, so that would be S4, right? We're using Cloud Connector. So Cloud Connector resides in the on-premise, and it helps to connect BTP to the local environment, to the on-premise environment. And that is kind of a high-level definition of the integration. And this is the simple one. I mean, relatively simple integration, but also it can be something like this. Yeah. So in this one is actually example of the digital integration hub, which I also mentioned, which was one of the cross use cases. And here you may already see why it is a cross use case. Yeah. And very simple, because in this case, there are many systems, there are many lines. And for example, this one may be the process integration, where you're just sending swap message from SAP S4HANA to cloud integration. But we are publishing to Kafka. From Kafka, there is also reading the messages and coming to the database. So that means it's also a data integration pattern somehow involved, but also there is a conc ingress. So it's maybe also API management here involved, yeah, because it's from the cloud, some third parties assessing our data. And also there is a different types of consumption, for example, from Kafka directly. Yeah, this is kind of a complex integration. But what I have seen in my practice, the previous one is more widely used than this one, this approach of the capturing like overall solution. So what I have seen, probably it's better to capture each line, kind of each integration when you are defining from system A to system B with such sort of tools. And additionally, you can also have the place where you are defining the whole solution. And in this case, you will kind of have the whole picture, right? You will have the one by one integrations, and also you'll have the whole picture like this, but separately. Also, you can see on this diagram that it's actually the outdated notation, because this notation was from previous version of ISAM. Yeah. Now the SAP created new notation, but from my experience as well, probably it's better to use some generic notation, which is not tied to any vendor. So for example, C4 might be a good choice here. But the most important thing that the blueprint should be kind of simple to grasp. I don't know, in 10 seconds, you should understand what is going on. Otherwise, it kind of loses the idea of the blueprint because it should be simple and it should capture the main idea very quickly. Okay, so that's all about the concepts, and now let's understand what is the interface assessment process, right? So the process, as I said, we are getting receiving the requirements from business, and in this case, the requirements might be like the business scenario. We have application 1, application 2, so please integrate them. It might be, I don't know, sales order integration between 2 systems, but we need to send sales order from 1 system, and we need the confirmation that the information received, from another system. So in the step number 1, we are decomposing this and understanding the requirements. So in this case, we're seeing that we need actually 3 interfaces, 3 integrations to deliver, and there is one from application 1 to application 2. There is two integrations, and there is one coming back. Okay. As you remember, we have this matrix which describes what are the styles, what are the patterns, and we can, based on our guidelines, but based on our documentation, just understand, okay, this probably is A to A, this is application to application. And then our framework, our methodology definition documentation gives us the response. Probably there is a number of tools which will be good for you with the definition like when and where to use what, right? And this is step number 3, you can see here. So it's cloud integration, there is MuleSoft, there is deep container edition. And if you are wondering why there are 3 tools which are basically doing the same, so this also happens like in the big companies. It also happens when we have like multiple tools solving the same problems, and there is a kind of rules or guidelines when to use what. And this is where the integration solution advisor methodology stops, I would say. It defines you what are the tools. But what I have seen that it's basically the next step, which is assigning the blueprint. You can see the step number 4. It's probably giving you the most advantage, because assigning the blueprint, you actually can segment your integrations, and you can think of the integrations not like one by one, but you can think, okay, I have the blueprint 1 to 3, and I have like 10 integrations following the same blueprint, so the same approach, and you can make, or you can think of the impact of some changes, not in terms of single like connections, but in terms of these segments. And it becomes very important at the time of the change, when something should be changed, kind of when you're thinking about the changing from PIPO to integration suite. So thinking in terms of these blueprints or this high-level approach, it's much more simpler than thinking about analyzing each of the connection point, understanding what is going on, how it is implemented, and what we need to do basically to migrate from one situation to another. This is why the blueprints are very important, and the assignment of the blueprint from to each of the integration points, to each of the integrations, it's really helpful here. Okay, so I think finally we already discussed these concepts, this process, the definition of the methodology, hopefully, is you understood. And now I want to show you some tools, some specifics how the methodology can be used, can be implemented, right? Because without the tools, you just write the documentation and that will be all, But maybe some additional accelerators should be good. So, and starting with this, I want to show you the tool which I have not used actually, and this is a tool which is called integration assessment. So integration assessment, this is a tool SAP prepared. This is basically part of the integration suite. This is a tool which SAP, I think they created in 2022. And I was already in the current project and I evaluated it with the enterprise architect at that time. So 2 years, 2.5 years ago. And at that time, there was a bit of a problem with this tool because it lacked the integration. Like it was funny, but it lacked the integration, and you cannot really use it because you should upload manually all the things. For example, you can see here there is really the domain, styles, patterns, all of this, what we discussed it here, but everything you should input manually. It's okay for styles and domains, but it's not okay for the applications. For example, you can have 100 to 200 applications, different applications, and you already can have define the integrations. So probably it makes sense to input all there. But at that time, there was no integration. That's why we didn't use it. But actually, there is a better tool, and it's also from SAP. Yeah, because recently, maybe a year or year and a half, I don't remember, but SAP acquired Leonix. And Leonix, it's actually a lot better tool for achieving the same, basically the same and even more, because in Leonix it's a graph database. Yeah, so you have the nodes, and nodes would be the fact sheets of different types. So you can have a fact sheet of application, you can have a fact sheet of data object, you can have a fact sheet of technical components or middleware platforms, and the blueprints. So everything can be defined. And then you have the arcs between these nodes, and that would be the relationships. And it's actually very naturally lies on these integration concepts, right? Because when you speak about the integration of systems, you are just connecting system A with system B, and it connects through the interface, and interface connects with the data objects, which is actually implementing. And then this interface also connects with the technology components which are helping to implement. So this is why Leonix is actually the ideal tool for this for usage of the ISM. And on the screen, you can see the example screenshots. This is kind of the fact sheet of the interface. You can see that the invoice integration from one system to another. And there are actually defined the data object, the platforms, the source system, target system, and all this. The second screenshot is actually the blueprint, which I showed you already, and it also can be defined in the Leonix. There is also a separate place for diagramming. The third, it's my favorite. This is how Leonix shows you this graph, actually the graph of the relationships of different fact sheets. And here you can see kind of we are in this step, and we can see what are the different types of the fact sheets where this exact thing is connected. And you can traverse this graph, you can go further, and you can understand, for example, which data objects are integrated from one system to another, or for example, if you step to the data object, you can understand like which systems are kind of using this, and this is very convenient, yeah, because those relationships is basically what can help you to analyze what is going on in your enterprise. Of course, it comes at a price, because you should really be very like rigid. You should understand like the unit. If anything changes, you should go and change it in the Leonix, right? And that is one of the basically key learnings, which we will discuss a little bit later. But basically, yeah, Leonix is a great tool, so I like it very much, and especially for the ISM implementations, it's a great help. Other tools, right? So not only Leonix, but this one, it's kind of less inspiring, probably, but still, so Gyra, of course, and why we're using this for the obviously some process stuff, yeah, because you need to approve, you need to basically perform the interface assessments, of course, for builds, for everything, for the SDLC, basically, but also for security approvals. Probably Gyra can be helpful. The Confluence or any wiki can be the place where you store all the documentations. As you can imagine, there is a bunch of documentations we need to create to support the methodology. So that's why we need some place where we store the documents, and also when we are going through and update this as well. And Excel. So Excel is a little bit tricky here, because initially I said that we are having everything in Leonix, but it turns out that it's also in Leonix we can have additional fields, but in reality there is still more of the information which you need to track. And ideally, of course, to track everything in the system, but it might be that you also need to have the Excel just to track everything or every integration. But this is kind of, if it's possible to avoid, so better to avoid, but it can be. So the next part, it's actually, I wanted to outline everything together, that just to show you how the systems which are supporting the ISM flow connected together. So you can see the Leonix, and it is supporting the interface fact sheet in the middle. There is data object connected to it. There is technical components, right? Sender application, architects, or basically responsible persons, contact persons for a specific fact sheet, specific interface. Receiver application is the blueprint. So all the things are connected together, and if you go to this, you can see like everything, every information like about this interface. Additionally, as I said, Confluence also linked to the fact sheet. Excel we discussed, advisable to avoid, and of course Gyra. So this is kind of how you can see, how the tools are helping you to achieve this kind of implementation of ISM. Okay, enough of the tools, right? Now I want to share probably my main insights and key learnings from the implementation and using this methodology, right? This is kind of a final part, and let's begin. So first of all, the trade-offs, because it's the most interesting thing. And the trade-offs, I think they are basically obvious. The first one, documentation intensity. So as I said, it's not coming for free, right? So anything you are implementing, especially this type of methodology, you have seen how much things were should define, and they should be defined somewhere physically, and probably in some sort of wiki or wiki structure, conference, basically. And of course, the more documentation you have, the more stale it becomes in time, right? Because the time you wrote it, like in a month, it's a little bit stale. In a year, probably it's almost not describing the reality, right? That's why you probably want to have some people, architects, who are actually going through the, who are actually working with closely with the integrations, understand what is the current situation, and also keep track what is the changing in overall like enterprise strategy. So for example, they can get the inputs from the enterprise architects just to understand what still is correct and what should be corrected, right, from the documentation perspective, because this documentation is basically what is being used by the solution architects and by different other roles we'll explore later to provide to deliver things, right? And this is what should be really up to date, at least to some point. Of course, we cannot have it like up to date every time. So the next thing is centralization. This is, of course, why it's trade-off, because it's the good and bad, right? Because if you have centralized solution, then you are having control over everything, you govern everything, and in ideal situation, so everything goes by your plan. But the other side of this is the bottleneck. So this department which handles everything can become a bottleneck in the processes in the delivery of the interfaces, especially if you might think of such situations when you migrate from ECC to S4, right? Or when you migrate from PIPO to integration suite. This kind of the processes when you have multiple things at one time, you need to think really how to segregate these parts of job to different people, and how not to really have a bottleneck in this department of the specifically for the architects. And the last one trade-off from my perspective is the implementation resistance, and this basically it can be the situation that you want to implement this, and there is a resistance from different groups of people. So you should really get the management buy-in. You should educate people. So what is this? Why do we need any methodology? And this is coming to the beginning of the talk. Like, why do we need it? And basically to go through all of this process to explain what it is, what are the steps, and how to use it, and to explain it to the different groups of people, to the different roles, because otherwise it can be kind of a silo when you create this and maybe someone uses it, but for example, now in the delivery we are using it, but in the operations just they create separate documentation, separate all. This kind of a situation which might be happening. So this is where this education and awareness is very important. And the key advantage, so of course, I think you might imagine that we have many advantages, like we have all documented, we have all in place, we understand what is the situation with our landscape and all. But basically, the primary advantage which I can see, at least based on my experience, is this readiness for change, meaning that whatever, as I described, the situations like migration to S4HANA, migration to some different platform, I mean the integration platform, so you're changing something to Kafka or something like this. So really change that impacts most of your integrations. So those changes will be met by you with confidence, right? Because you understand, you can segment your interfaces, you can understand what are your blueprints in use. And if you look at this really from the high level and not interface by interface, not like line by line, you can do it very quick. You can analyze the impact, you can perform the analysis here of the situation, and you can create the roadmap for the change, specifically what should be done for this type of interfaces, what should be done by this type of interfaces. And you can give this roadmap, like create basically user stories from this and give it to delivery. This is how it can be done, quicker, simpler, and with less errors, yeah, with the methodology. So this is, I think, the key advantage which I can think of. And now, like coming to the end, this is the key learnings. So key learnings which I see here. The first one, that IZM, running the IZM, especially on scale, so it's not for like a simple little part of the business, but for the big part of the business, it might be cumbersome, it might be a problem, but it needs just a dedication, it needs the people resources. If you dedicate resources, you will get the result, right? The integration with current methodologies. So as I said, should not be a silo. So the enterprise architect, the delivery, the solution architect, so everyone should work together, the operations, and this is not exception. So IZM, it's just a part which also should connect some of the dots around. Data lineage. This is something from the data world, yeah, data lineage, like from which source the data came. And here it's also important in the integration world, because you can have the situations when the source schema, for example, changes, and you want to understand what will be the impact. And it's actually not so simple in some cases where there is asynchronous communication with message brokers, and there are separate topics or separate queues. And if you don't really have this information in place, for example, in Leonix, it will be actually error-prone situation when you change something, and then when you move this to production, something broken in the other side of your enterprise. So this can be a situation as well. Consistency in integration patterns, but in general consistency. So it's basically, we have seen the names, data integration, process integration, so whatever event-based, it doesn't matter how you call it, but if you are using it in consistent manner, if you call the same thing with the same names, it will be a good implementation of the methodology. So the regular revision and updating, and this is, we discussed, right, the documentation. So it really should be a person or two persons, maybe once in a half year at least, going through all of the documentation related to the methodology and to see what is still relevant and what should be corrected. Because it's, as I said, documentation is the input for the architects. So of course it should be as much as possible up to date. and necessity for product thinking. So in this case, the users of the ISM, the different groups of people, the QA engineers, also developers, architects, enterprise solution architects, delivery managers. So there are many facets of the methodology, and you should think how you are preparing these artifacts so that they can be usable for those groups of people. And this is very important. You should think like why you're doing this, and how exactly you are doing this. This is very important. And the main product from the ISM is basically all the artifacts and in general the model of the organization from the integration point of view. And that's why I want to show you this quote from Jerry Box. Yeah, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So I hope with the ISM your models will be useful. Thank you. Thank you for listening. And now we have some time for questions, not so much though.
No worries, Alexander. Thank you so much for giving this information in a really thorough and comprehensive way. Okay, right, let's get down to the Q&A part. Question number 1. Could you please clarify if there are any dependencies between domain and styles?
Yeah, of course. It's kind of one is a refinement of another. So let me go back. So the process integration, and inside the process integration style, we are defining some sort of specific, more refined use case patterns, and they are connected to this style. So style is a higher level, more generic. Use case patterns is a more specific and more close to the real world situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, here comes question number 2. Is it possible to use ISM to migrate integrations from one platform to another, for example, Boomi to SAP CI?
Yeah, good question. So basically, if you already have implemented everything, and for some reason you are like using Boomi and you have implemented ISM and you know like everything, you know the blueprints, you have everything in place, then of course. But I think the reality would be that you have the Boomi, you have some sort of landscape, you have not implemented ISM yet, and the process would be like you're changing to the different platform, and by the way you're also implementing this methodology, because basically this very good question, because I didn't say it before. So the best time to implement such sort of methodology is the time of the big change, because you're anyway going through all of the interfaces. So you might imagine if you're changing the main integration platform, you are like going through each of the integration which is in this platform, and you anyway should go through the documentation. So this is the best time to implement it.
Thanks a lot. Okay. So while you are generating new questions, we encourage you to join our community on other social networks like LinkedIn, Telegram, Spotify, and of course, we are a community platform via the link in the chat. Okay, and here's question number 3. Are there any specific roles or responsibilities defined within ISM for different stakeholders involved in the integration process?
Yeah, of course. So basically there's a normal roles. So the enterprise architect, like the solution architects, developers, but also there are such roles like a citizen developers, and this is more, I think, so for the higher maturity level. Yeah, for example, you can have self-service situation where you give the platform, and there are certain people, citizen developers, who can make like in a low code environment, they can make some integrations following the templates. So those roles are also defined, but mainly, if you will, so in this number 4, in step number 4, if you go in the ISM definition, step number 4, especially evaluation and empowerment, there is a list of the roles, and you can go here and check. So basically all of those which I said, and probably a little bit more roles are defined.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so are there any other questions? Okay, as I can see, no. All right then. So
Thank you.
if there is yeah, if there is nothing left, so we would like to thank you, Alexander, once again for throwing light on such an interesting topic. And as I have already mentioned, so the webinar recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, and the link to this recording will be sent in a separate email. Colleagues, thank you very much for spending this time with us, and have a great day.
Thank you for joining. Thank you, Ilona. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.